So then you get through this feeling of, at least for me, like, now what? Like, I did all of this training. Yep. I accomplished this goal. What am I gonna do now? As I'm thinking about it, I'm like, well, you know, I'm still want to know why I don't see more Black women and more women of color in these running spaces. I still want to know more about it. And I could like research this, but I can also research this and run different marathons to meet people and understand this running space. And so I came up with this brilliant idea of like, well, why don't I run like a half marathon in every state? Because a half marathon is doable. I can do it. And then like, you know, go shop and have a drink. It's fine. But then if I, you know, tour around the states, I would have a better understanding of this running culture. This will be a great way to study running, to run more, meet people, and really understand this space. And living in Boston, Massachusetts, in the New England area, you can get to about 6 states within an hour and a half. So it's easy. You can just drive and everything's close. Now, I didn't think through my plan in the beginning of like, oh, after you get through the first 6 states, how are you gonna do the other states? I didn't. But I just thought like, sure, this will be fun. And so after the Flying Pig Marathon, that was in May, I started my 50-state, 50-half journey, and that the end of May. It was Memorial Day weekend, and I just started then. And so I started in 2015, and this year, 2020, I was supposed to finish. I had 4 more states left. It was Hawaii for the finish, Oregon, Wyoming, and Idaho would be my last one. So I was like, the final 4, this is great. Didn't happen. That's okay. I got plenty of stories, plenty of adventures in between. And I'm sure for many people who run new races, I mean, we're all kind of grieving a little bit because I'm missing running. I'm missing doing races. I'm missing that. And I never thought my 37-year-old self would ever say that. That's crazy.
And that's a great point. Since COVID hit and it stopped your goals, what are you doing now during COVID to, you know, fill that void for now until we're open again to run marathons?
Yeah, it's like a cheap void because I know there's all of these like virtual races. And for me, this is just for me, like, I don't want to do them. Like, I hate them. Like, what's the point of doing it? I can, you know, spend money, get a medal when I run every day. Like, I don't get it. That doesn't fit my, my craving, if you will. I mean, can I get that bib number and like do the
Right.
Like, the turkey trot didn't quite do it, but it was fun, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you were doing like studies about racial discrepancies and stuff. With your findings, how do you plan on using that to break some barriers and get the word out there?
Yeah, I've published a couple of things. One is in this magazine called Context Magazine. And what I've found is that part of the disparities are access. People think that running is a cheap thing. It's easy to do. You just get a pair of shoes and go. But people don't realize that you need a sidewalk, you need green space, you need safe spaces to run, and people don't have access to that. And also access to time. I mean, it's a privilege to be able to say, oh, I'm going to take an hour to go run. Because of my work schedule, I can kind of do that. But for many people, it's a matter of, you know, they don't have that privilege to take an hour or 2 to run. So there's a time issue as well. And then also for many women that I've talked to, they don't see themselves. So why would you think this is a space for you if you don't see yourself? You don't see yourself in magazines, you don't see yourself running, you know, down the street. So why is this space for you? And I also think culturally, how running has been phrased is African Americans do track and field, white people do long distance, right? Or it's the African Americans that run marathons. So that's kind of the cultural framing. And I think those stereotypes have been embedded in society and with people of color of like, so for me, I never thought that I could run because again, I thought running such a white space, like long distance, I'm like, I don't, you know, that's a space that I can run in. That's for me. I can do this. But then just seeing more representation makes a difference. And that's the thing now. And unfortunately, or fortunately, because of Black Lives Matter and many of the racial unrest has been happening, and with Ahmaud Arbery, who is running while Black, it's brought more attention to mainstream runners, mainstream society, about an issue that's been there for such a long time. It's nothing new. And even when I was running across country, those same feelings of uneasiness, of belonging in spaces, hoping that people see like I'm a runner and not, question me being running in their neighborhood, was something that I've felt way before this. And when I've talked to other runners, older African American runners, I mean, we're sharing the same story.
Right.
And just bring that aware. So it's a good thing that people are now more aware of this, but it's something that, it's not new. And now in the era of COVID, it's an added stress, if you will, because you had to wear your mask while running. So wear your mask, be Black, run. It's like, okay, all these things. And so it's not just, I can slip on a pair of shoes and just go. And I think people don't understand that. And so I found that, and also too, what I found, and it's very real, it's a hair issue. So it's hair politics in terms of in the African American community. It's like, oh, you don't want to like mess up your hair, sweat your curls out, as we say. But and that's kind of a hindrance for women to run in these spaces. But what I found is that there's no conversation about it. So women are going to the internet, maybe looking at YouTube videos of like, if I run, how do I take care of my hair? And that's a real thing.
Right. Your hair looks flawless right now. So probably got it down pat.
Thank you. But I didn't, right, because I didn't know, like, how do you upkeep your hair? And I learned talking to my hairdresser of like, oh, because, I wash my hair once a month. Like, I don't wash my hair every day, but she's like, when you run, you need to rinse it because the salt will be on like your scalp and like in your pores. I'm like, oh, okay. And so but I learned that tip from her because I was talking to her, then finding other Black women who run, and we're having conversations like, how do you do your hair? How does it work? And how do you function? I mean, that's real. And those are conversations that aren't being had in the dominant kind of mainstream culture of running.
Makes sense. Complete sense. I know I've struggled with that a lot, especially running in track and field and in sprinters and in heat. And what can I do with my hair, especially if you're on camera?
Exactly. People don't, and I love it. When I was running in Detroit, I saw women wearing like the hijabs, and they were running, just like, oh, okay, like, yes, but you don't see that, so that was my like, oh, all right. And I think another thing besides seeing physical representation, which is so important, but also diversity in body types. Because there's this notion that runners are, I mean, I'm stereotyping, like size 2, small, and I'm a thick woman. I'm proud of it. I got hips and thighs and all kinds of things are busting out. And so to see other women who physically, have my similar shape, I'm like, oh, and you run too, and you've done how many marathons? Like, okay, like I can do this too. And so that was also part of the seeing a diversity in body sizes who are running and totally kicking ass on the pavement. It's like, oh, so I don't have to be a size 2, and I don't, it's okay to have a wider, thick frame and still do this. Oh, okay, I'm in, I'm good. But otherwise, right, you don't think that you should be in this space.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So true.
When I pick a race, when I was doing this journey, I always made sure to run like on my birthday, around Mother's Day, and on my mother's birthday, and on her passing day. Like that's my way to honor her. Yeah. So her is to run. And so this race, my mother passed away in July. So there was a race in Florida in July, so not smart, this Masters of All-Terrain race. And it was the only race in the state of Florida in July. Again, why are we shocked? But I was like, okay, it's a race. I'm going, this is a race I can see on my mom's day. I'm going to do it. And I didn't realize that it was all in the forest. And I'm like, oh. And I went to the race site. I normally go to the race, like the race route before I run, just to kind of get a feel, like, what is this going to be like? And I was there, and one of the race directors happened to be there. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm running the race from Boston. We had this conversation. He's like, oh, you'll love it. It's great. And he's like, the bears won't bother you. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? He's like, the bears won't bother you. He's like, they're black bears. They're more afraid of you than you are of them. I'm like, but you said bears.
Right.
You said bears. Did not. And he was just like, what? I'm like, but you said bears. And I'm like, and so I go to this race. It's because it's Florida. We had to start early. It was like something like 5 a.m. You get there like at 3 something. It's dark. They had tiki torches. And I'm thinking I'm in the forest and they're bears. And I'm hearing sounds. And I'm like, oh crap. It's like a bear. And I'm looking and I realized I don't know what a bear sounds like. I mean, I think I know, but I'm like, I don't really know what a bear sounds like. So I need to like calm it down. And we ran literally like in the forest, which I've never done. And so it was all like, you know, they were being environmentally careful. So all the fanfare you normally see, they just had flags. They're like, so just go on the left of the flags, like follow the flags that are in the ground. I was like, what? And so it was just me and nature and some other people and this thing called sugar sand, which is like quicksand. So when you step in it, you sink. So you gotta have high knees.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
What and at one point I thought I got lost because I couldn't see a flag. And I'm like, where are the flags? Where are the people? I'm in the forest with the bears. I'm like, is this how I'm gonna die? I'm like, does my cell phone work? Just like, and I'm like, okay, just relax. Because I freaked out. Someone who ran past me, I'm like, ooh, and let me follow this person. So I'm following this person, and then I see a flag. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm on the right path. And in my like, okay, I'm good, I'm happy. What happened? Boom.
Oh,
I jumped back up, did like, I don't know if you saw like Legally Blonde. What is it, like the business
the
snap?
Yeah.
I scared the Jesus out of myself. I'm like, oh my God, I'm patting myself down and there's dirt and a little bit of blood and my phone cracked. I'm like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. I just got whatever it is. I will find the strength and get the freak out of here. And I ran it and I saw more people and I was done, which has been interesting because I didn't know what I would see, do, or expect on this journey. And so part of it not only is a story about understanding the running culture, the running space, but also seeing America.
right.
And understanding American history and really understanding who we are. So I guess the divisions among us, but actually in these spaces, I realize I'm like, I get it. I'm like, I get it now. So I mean, people always ask me kind of what's your favorite race? Like I don't have a favorite race. I feel like they're all children, but I can tell you running in West Virginia, it is literally hilly. It's super hilly. And I've never been in West Virginia before. So this was the Harpoon, like half marathon near Harper's Ferry, which was, it was the Harper's Ferry half marathon. Harpoon's a beer. And so you're seeing this historic place, Harper's Ferry. It has like Civil War history, and it's part of like Virginia. You can see like Maryland, and it's like this beautiful place, and it's all hills. And I don't know what race where mile 12 you go straight up a hill. Like I think that was the race that I probably cursed the most because you're going up and down hills. I'm like, why did I do this to myself? Why do people do this? Why do people run? Like I hate everybody. Oh my, that is probably my favorite race in New Orleans. I did like the rock and roll half marathon in New Orleans, Louisiana, 20,000 something people. And it's a party and they have food and drinks. And I'm like, why are you doing this? So people are like, oh, you want shots of bourbon? Oh, you want beer? Oh, we've got beignets. I'm like, what is happening? And that was a race where probably for the first time, because there were so many people, like I was never left alone. Right. So it was like, there were so many folks, like, I wasn't like, oh, I've got space to run. I'm good. It's like, there are people around me like all the time, you know, and people get dressed up and just seeing like the crowd. That was just a nonstop party. What makes sense is New Orleans.